All this started because of a bottle of Jack Daniels in the bed. Well, I guess you can say it was November 24th, 2022. We had just finished celebrating Ethelonian Independence Day, which had happened the day before. And I woke up and heard my toddler crying. And I rolled over to Mia and said, "Mia, can you get that?" I was still a little bit hungover. So she got up and got it. And then beside the bed there was a nightstand, and I opened the drawer to that nightstand, which, well, on each side of our bed, we had Mia's nightstand and my nightstand. You see, we had honored each other's privacy. And, well, I guess I should have kept this private. And I opened me up just a little bottle of Jack Daniels. And then I started to sip on it. And then Mia came back in our marital bedroom holding Rose. And yep, she caught me, is it red-handed or brown-handed or bourbon-handed? I don't know. She caught me drinking, okay? I don't And yeah, she gave me the lecture. "Oh, you're drinking in the morning, right after suffering a hangover." Ethan, ever since we gotten back from Chicago, your depression has gotten worse. And I said, "Well, yeah, it's gotten worse. Ever since that horrible prank Grant pulled on me, I've just been a joke in a green jacket and jeans. That's what I am now, just a joke." And Mia said, "Ethan, remember that agent from Markovs that offered us some free therapy? Well, he actually offered you free therapy, and I really think we should take it. In fact, I think I still have his card." And I said, "Oh, no." So she came back in with the brochure and she read it, and Mia said, "Ethan, I really think you should read this." And I did. And well, it did seem pretty promising then, but, well, I don't think I would be making an episode of this show if it did work out that well, wouldn't I? No, we wouldn't. So come on. And the next day we were calling the guy. And then the agent made all these promises that they were going to help me, and also they've been offering free therapy for all the people that they've hurt. Good on them. And the next day, Mia was ordering us a plane ticket to where the therapy was. The Ethelonian branch, at least. And the Athenian branch, it was, well, you see, the Ethonia, it has its territories that are overseas. And the area that it was in was Inagua, which is an island off the coast of Florida. and it is owned by, it's Ethelonian territory, but it used to be part of the Spanish Empire, so there are quite a few Hispanics there. And before I could do anything, by November 26th, Mia had already ordered the plane tickets, and on the late afternoon of the 27th, we were at San Marquis Airport, and yep, that night we slept in a beachside hotel, and Mia rented us a car, and she drove me to the new Markov location. Now, part of this was to actually get therapy, but the other part was to kind of do some undercover work. See if they really are. If they really are going to help us. Now, the Markov branch, you see, it was on this little ridge that was overlooking the ocean, you see, and it was in some big open grassy area, and it was surrounded by fences, and so we pull into the guard shacks before the guard shack opened the gate. And when the guard shack was about to open the gate, he said, "Oh, we've been waiting for you, Mr. and Mrs. Upshur." And he let us both in. And then, I thought that was weird, but that was just small potatoes, as they say, for all the things that were to come. So we parked, and then we walked into two rather medium-sized doors, and then we walked in to a front desk with glass in front of it, and they said, "Oh, hey, Ethan, we've been looking forward to seeing you." And she said, "All right, you just need to fill out this paperwork." And so we did, although it did ask for some very personal information. Like, it asked for, I'm not surprised they asked for my birthday and social security number, but they asked, like, was I okay with working in a cold environment? Do you like camping? Not sure why they would ask me that. But anyway, me and Mia filled it out, and then that's when this started getting bad. A security guard came through, and he was a kind of medium-sized Hispanic male, and he said, "Mr. Upshur, you need to come with me." And so I turned to go with him, and the Hispanic man held out his hand and said, "I'm sorry, senora, but it's only for Ethan. This is where we leave you." And I knew I was going to have to say goodbye to Mia for a little while, but I didn't think it would be this soon. I said, "Okay, Mia, remember, come get me back in 3 days, okay?" And she said, "Okay, 3 days. And he said, and the Hispanic guard said, "Oh, well, ma'am, it might be more than 3 days. It might be more." And she said, Oh, I'm coming back in 3 days. And if you don't let me visit him, I will do everything in my power to get him out." And then the lady at the front desk said, "Okay, I don't think we need to be making threats this early in the game. It's a little bit too early in the party for that. So I think we should just let Ethan just go to his therapy. And Mia, why don't you just enjoy the nice beaches we have here? I'm sure you can get a tan and buy you a new bikini." And Mia just looked at her rather cynically, and she held up 3 fingers and walked away. But I tried to picture Mia rubbing sunscreen on herself, wearing a red bikini, and sitting out on some beach chair. Or who knows, maybe rubbing some suntan oil. Wait, but she didn't like rubbing it on her back. And wait a minute, oh, no, Ethan, don't think about another guy rubbing it on her back. So, I followed this Hispanic security guard. And he led me through 2 big doors. And on each side there was what appeared to be office rooms, and then he led me to the first door that was on the left side. And it kind of looked like a big doctor's office. And then they said, okay, we need to test you here. And then they pulled up my sleeve, although they didn't have to pull it up too far because I had come in. I wasn't wearing my normal green jacket and jeans. I was wearing a pair of khakis, and I was wearing my Hey Dudes. I also wore a gray t-shirt, and over that I was wearing a yellow, kind of calico-looking button-up shirt, but it kind of looked like a baseball jersey, and it was open. But anyway, they pulled that up, and they drew some blood from me. But it wasn't that much. They just stuck a syringe and extracted some blood, and then they gave me a fucking COVID test. God damn it, I hate those things. Who the hell came up with that COVID test? I'd like to meet that bastard. Going all the way up your nose? Whatever. Yeah, they were checking me for viruses or the flu or any infections. And then after that, they bought out the pee cup and said, alright, pee in this. I mean, I've never felt that I gave off the appearance of a tweaker or a stoner or a crackhead or a meth head, but I still had to take the drug test nonetheless. And of course, everything came back clean. So the Hispanic guard led me to the next room. And then that's when the embarrassing part started. They made me take off my clothes and then put the black ink on and identify, they had to get fingerprints on me. And then they took a mug shot like I was some kind of criminal. And yep, they said, and then after they searched me and searched my clothes, they said, okay, you can have these back. And I was thankfully allowed to put my clothes back on. And then they sat me down in a chair. And then that's where the Hispanic guard left me. And he walked away. And then I was approached by, I hope my wife doesn't hear this episode, but a very pretty nurse. Although she just got promoted to nurse practitioner. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, she won't let you forget that. And she said, okay, Ethan Mark Upshur, born June 25th, 1990. And I said, yep, guilty as charged. Yes, born in Cape Fear, North Carolina. Yeah, you should have some fear. What? And the attractive nurse said, oh, nothing, honey. Okay. Yeah, we're very well of you, Mr. Upshur. Yeah, we know that you got 2 of our branches shut down. And I said, well, yeah, you were experimenting on people. And you were doing inhumane experiments on people. Yeah, like, why should they not be shut down? Mr. Upshur, a lot of people lost their jobs because of you. And I said, well, sometimes people pick shitty companies to work for. Okay. Yep, I don't think this nurse will let me take her to dinner. And she said, okay, I'll get the doctor. And then a few minutes later, an older white man with thin gray hair, and it was all slicked back. He wasn't bald like Dr. Eugenic, and he was significantly taller than Dr. Eugenic, and he looked to be in a little bit better shape. And he said, Mr. Upshur, we're glad you're here, and it's okay, we know you've caused some trauma, but you've caused some trauma to this company too, but that still doesn't make up for the fact that we caused you trauma. So, let's help each other. We're gonna give you some free treatment, and you are gonna give us a positive review. Tell some other people about us. Am I right? I held back for a little bit, and I said, we shall see. And Dr. Easterman said, well, I don't know. If you're not going to be agreeable, we could always put some restraints on you, like we did at St. Stephen's. And I said, are you threatening me, Dr. Easterman? No, we're not, he said. He had a little bit of a pep in his step. And he said, no, we just want you to take this pill. Okay. Now, hold on. How do I know that it's not poisonous or roofie? Because it's not. Okay? It's just not. Please just take my word for it. It is a prescription pill that every patient here takes, okay? So just please take my word for it. Please. It's not poisonous. Why would we kill you? Because we have other patients here. I mean, why would we set up a warehouse and hire all these employees just to take you out? We would have sent a hitman. Wait, what? I'm being logical with you, Mr. Upshur, so please take the pill. And they offer me some water, and Great Anagua is a tropical island, like off the coast of Florida, so it's hot, even in November, so I took it. And I'm proud to say I did not collapse or die. But they allowed me to get up, and they walked me through the hallway that the Hispanic guard had walked me through, and then they opened 2 big black doors you see in factories and warehouses, and they led me into what kind of looked like a cell block. It looked like one of the cell blocks from St. Stephen's. But it was different from St. Stephen's. It had a bit more of an open feeling. And also, the cells looked different, too. They weren't they weren't bar doors. They were like traditional, like, no, they were little like office doors with little windows on them. It's like, and then I also noticed that in the center of this little cell block, there were like metal picnic tables, okay? And these two guys, and they were wearing beige uniforms that were also very similar to St. Stephen's uniforms, and they were arm wrestling, it looked like, but they also had these black headsets on their heads. And, well, I wish I noticed more about them then. But they led me up the metal stairs to the second floor, and I said, wait a minute. What if you're helping someone who's paralyzed and who can't get up all these stairs? What? To hell with disabled people? And the nurse whispered under her breath, smart ass. And Dr. Eastman said, no, we can make, well, I'm sure there's some other way we can help them, but they won't be able to participate in this particular experimental therapy. Okay, I got very nervous with the way he said it. But he opened a door for me, which was the second door on the right. It was the second door near the stairs. And he opened it to me, and the room, it was about the size of a college dorm room, but with only one bed. And there was a sink on it, and there was also a nice purple carpet. There was also a desk at the front of the room. There was a nightstand, and there was also a shelf. Okay. And but on the bed there was that same beige uniform and the black headset. And Dr. Easterman explained, okay, Mr. Upshur, what we need you to do is we need you to put those clothes on. And while you're doing that, I will explain to you what's basically what you can do with this room. Now, if you participate in our trials, you can go down to our store. And you see, after you finish a trial, we'll pay you some of our currency. And then after that, you can go over to the store. And then you can order some extra snacks, but we will feed you plenty in the mess hall that's also on this floor. But you can also order, if you save up enough, you can get a record player. And you can also get some vinyl records. Now, you can't keep the record player, but the records, they are yours to keep. And don't worry, we order records all the time, so it's no big deal. And you can also order, figurines as trophies, and those trophies are also yours to keep. And I said, oh, okay, well, at least I got some souvenirs when I come out of this place, as I was putting the beige pants on. And he said, okay, well, the mess hall's down that hall, and across the other side of the cell block is the shower room, as well as the bathrooms in general. But that's on the right side of the cell block. And I said, okay, well, you better not be serving no damn Taco Bell in this mess hall. You better not. Okay, and downstairs you have the shop. You also have the nurse's station, and there's also like a commons room. You see, there's TVs, there's board games, there's a foosball table. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? Yeah, pretty cool for a president. And Dr. Eastman said, what? And what? I didn't say nothing. That's what I said. And then he said, okay, Mr. Upshur, Dr. Easterman said. Well, what are you waiting for? Try on the headset. So I put on the headset. It was kind of like a VR. And I pulled down the visor with what appeared to be two goggles that you see out of. And he said, okay, push the button on the right side of the set. And I did. And then Dr. Eastman immediately turned off the lights. But I could see that old familiar green glow. Night vision. Okay, good, I said. So when I get up at night to take a piss, I'll know where I'm going. Thanks. And Dr. Easterman, with his fake goofy smile, said, oh, Mr. Upshur, that's not what they're used for. And he said, okay, now push the button on the right. And then, doo-doo. And then a white arrow came out. And I could see like some kind of tracker. And I said, okay, was that pill LSD? Because I'm starting to see some stuff, Bill. And so I walked out onto the hallway / balcony on the cell block. And I looked over, and the white arrow was in the back of the cell block. And he said, it's time for your first trial, Mr. Upshur. Are you excited? Dr. Easterman said, like an elementary school teacher. And I said, sure. Living the dream. And so I lifted up the headset, and we walked down the stairs again, and we approached this area full of green light at the back of the cell block. And I noticed that there were 4 revolving doors. And they were real skinny revolving doors, too. They looked like tubes. They look like. And so I went through the revolving doors, and I was led into what appeared to be, it kind of looked like the inside of a wide camper, but it was one big room. And there were a couple windows out, and there was a door at the end of it. And then I heard Dr. Easterman over the intercom. Okay, Mr. Upshur, sit down in one of the chairs. Any chair will do. So I sat down on the second chair from the left, and then, and I felt this room that I was in start to move, and it must have been attached to some wheels. And then it slowly moved, and then a screen came in front of me, and it was Dr. Easterman, and he said, hi, welcome to your first trial, Mr. Upshur. I certainly hope you're excited. I know I sure am. And we took what we know about you, and we made it into a physical simulation where you get to see your past. Are you ready? Good, because you better be. And no, you don't have a choice. Of course I don't have a choice. Why the fuck would I? And then eventually, this moving room came to an abrupt stop. And I heard another voice over the intercom. Please exit through the door. So I did. And then I noticed that I was in another area of this big warehouse they had me in. And it was so big and so echoey, and it kind of looked like the back rooms, and it just seemed to go on and on forever. So I stepped out, and then I walked towards what appeared to be a fence, and behind that fence, it wasn't a very tall fence, there was what appeared to be a Southern Gothic colonial mansion. I had to walk closer to get a good look at it, but I started walking, and then I noticed something laying on the ground, but it was someone laying on the ground, and it was right outside the gate, and I looked at him, and I noticed that he was wearing that beige uniform, and on the back of the beige uniform, it said, St. Stephen's. The man was laying face down in a red sticky puddle. Oh my God, are they actually killing people here? I thought, okay. Wait a minute, hold on, but this body, I've seen plenty of dead bodies, but this body it's pale, like really pale, like chalky white pale. Hold on, this can't be right. So I extend my foot and I tap it. I tap the body, and corpses are usually stiff because of rigor mortis, but this one was too stiff, and it was hard too. The body was real hard, so I shook it, and I heard a little rattling sound, and it really was just a mannequin. But they had put it in St. Stephen's uniforms to mess with me? Jesus Christ, what a bunch of fucking assholes. So I cynically kept on walking, and I approached this old Southern Gothic colonial house. I walked up the stairs, and then I noticed there was another body against right beside where the door is, but it was in a strange way. The body was on its knees, and, well, it was a mannequin. I'm just clarifying that. I at a closer look, it was a mannequin, but it was on its knees, and its head was against the wall, and it was wearing the same St. Stephen's uniform. And then I walked into the house, and on the right side of me, I noticed that there was a velvet living room. And so I walked in, and there was a big red couch, and above the fireplace there was a television set, and I looked up and I noticed that they were playing A Nightmare on Elm Street, and it was the particular scene where Freddy Krueger raises his claws and said, "This is God." And it was that particular scene. I don't know, I just thought it was weird that I walked in on that particular scene. And then I heard something. I heard a baby crying, and I don't know, maybe it's just the paternal instinct in me. I ran to the other side of the house, and it was on the left side of the entrance area where you first enter a house, and it was a crib, a really big crib with what appeared to be bars, like big metal bars, almost like a prison cell. And I looked down, and it was a creepy CPR baby, but it had a blue baby blouse on. And I noticed that it was dark behind the crib, but then flash! The light shone, and I saw two figures standing behind the crib, opposite side of me. And one of them was a woman, And that was one big woman. She was rather large, and she, was round, and she was also very wide. And she wore a dress with red at the bottom, but her top was white, and it almost looked like linen. And she had a mask, and it looked like a leather face mask, like the stuff you'd see in Texas Chainsaw. And it had and the mask had red lipstick, and she had real messy black curly hair, like a big hairball she pulled out of the drain. And then to the right of her was a man, and he was a very tall man, and he was kind of well built. He looked to be a little bit muscular, and he was wearing a cop hat with a star right in the middle of his hat, and he was smoking a cigarette. And the man, he had a thin black beard, and he was a white man, and he had a black leather jacket with a police badge embroidered on it, and he had one of those black belts, but no weapons on it. And he was wearing like blue police jeans, police pants, sorry, they weren't jeans. And I looked down, and I thought, what's he got in his hand? It wasn't a gun or a knife. And he squeezed real hard, and then the blue lightning came out. And I remembered my father, who was a cop and eventually worked his way up as sheriff. When I was little, back in the 90s, he used to pull out his taser and shoot it and shoot off lightning, and he would do that to scare me. But I did think it was kind of cool, but also kind of scary how he had that kind of weapon. And he always used to say, if I was ever bad, he would use it on me, and he would get away with it too. Although I think those were just idle threats. I don't think my dad would have done that. And then he said, "It's been a while since you've been home, boy." And they were still as statues. I wasn't even sure if they could talk. And then the woman said, "Ethan, come give your mama a kiss, your mama." And she held out her hands, and she had what appeared to be acrylic nails, but they were silver. And then I realized they were claws. And then she started walking the other side of the crib, and I thought, "No, not giving you a hug." And I ran into the main hallway of the building. And then I noticed that there was a white room behind a door, and I ran, and I closed the door, and I locked it. And then I could hear what appeared to be, I guess she was the distorted figure of my mother, and she said, "You take as long as you need in the bathroom, honey." And that's what I was in. I was in a bathroom, and it was all white, but there was blood everywhere. And I mean, on the ceilings, on the mirror, on the wall, and even on the toilet. And I looked over it, there was a bathtub in it, and the water was all gray. And I stuck my 2 fingers, and I immediately pulled back because it was cold as ice. And I thought, those sons of bitches, how did they know that sometimes when I was bad and Mama needed to save money on the water bill, she would claim it was to save money on the water bill, but it was really just to scare me into taking a bath or taking a shower. And she would take a bath, and it would be a nice warm one. And she would use all kinds of soap and shampoo and conditioner, and sometimes her hair would fall out. And then, if I refused to take a bath, she would pick me up and force me under the water. And it was after she had been bathing for like almost an hour, so that water was really cold, really soapy, and just nasty. And she would force me under the water, all because I refused to take a bath. And it was traumatizing for 5 and 6-year-old me. And she also used to do that to take her anger out on me when the divorce happened in 97. I knew I had to get out of there. I didn't care what was out there. So I opened the door, and then I wasn't safe on the first floor. So I ran up the stairs that were adjacent to the bathroom. But, it was similar to my house back in Cape Fear, North Carolina, that I was born in, I grew up in, but it wasn't exactly the same as my house in Cape Fear. And then I got up the stairs, and then I noticed the first door above the stairs was open, and the cop, or who I guess was my father, he was holding something in his hands, and on her knees was my mother, and I heard the electricity crackling. And then the cop slowly turned his head towards me and smiled, and then turned into an ugly grimace. And he said, "What you looking at? Boy, what you looking at?" And then I ran all the way to the back of the second floor where there was a window, and then I ran into the other room, and then I realized I was in my old room. The bed had it was black, but it had stars all over it, and up on the ceiling were planets like Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Neptune. And there was also a window in my room, but I should have used the window. So I hid under the bed, and then the cop came in, still crackling his electric stick. And he said, Ethan, I'm not mad, boy. I just want to teach you a lesson. It's okay. After this little lesson, it'll be okay." And I was hiding under the bed like a little kid. Although I must say, the bed was a lot bigger than what I remember. And then he looked in the little closet, but I wasn't there, and he was disappointed. And so he turned away to walk out of the room, but in a heart-stopping moment, he froze right as he was walking out the door, and he turned around and said, "You should have used the window, Ethan. Get out from under there! Now! Don't make me come in there and drag you, boy." And so I got out from under the bed to face him, and then he ran towards me, and he came right against me, and he kicked me right in the face with his hard black leather boot. And then he pressed me right on the back. And he let off, and I scrambled out of the bed. And then, right into my side, right in my rib cage, he jammed that stick in there. And then I felt the shivering of being tased. And I stood there for a couple seconds. And then I stopped. And then he held out the stick again. And then I punched him right in the chest. And then he raised the stick again. And then I stamped right on those toes of his. And he came back a little bit. And then he thrust that stick right in my chest and pushed me back against the dresser. Oh! It hurt my back. And I fell against the wall. The back of my head hit the wall. And then he ran towards me full force. And then, as he was running towards me, I knew I had to stop him. And in a gut instinct, I kicked him right in between the legs. And he screamed, "Oh! Oh! Oh!" right in the round tables. And he said, "You making sure you ain't got no siblings, boy." And then I ran out of my room, and then I saw my mother with her arms stretched out in a hug with her metal claws. And then, as she was running towards me, I was able to narrowly escape down the stairs, and I ran, and I ran out that house, and I knew they were chasing me. And they said, "Don't run away from us, Ethan! Don't run! That's what you've been doing! Ever since your mother died, you run from us!" And then I ran right back into that mobile moving room, and I slammed the door shut. And then thank God that door had a lock on it, and they scratched at the door, and that cop hit it. Yeah, it didn't take a detective to figure out those guys were supposed to represent my parents. Oh. And then Dr. Easterman came on that screen again and said, "I think we've discovered a big part of your problem, Ethan. This is all very interesting. We'll return you back to your home for now." Yeah, I knew it was going to be a while before I ever saw my real home again.